All right, I think we're gonna begin this webinar. So thank you everyone for joining today. I'm really excited for this webinar session, and for those of you that's the first time, my name is Ross Chesnick, and the webinar series that we have here are really focused on hospitality, stadium, and entertainment operators, really targeting best practices and industry insights for other operators, and that really is the goal of this webinar. So I'm really excited today to have Andrey Tolmachyov, the director of suites at Legends at SoFi Stadium. Andrey and I have, become friends over the past couple months as we've interacted quite a bit as Listo has done some work there. So today's theme is really kind of playing into Andrey's very unique background before he came to SoFi Stadium. And that's why the title is this Striving for Excellence, a Michelin-Inspired Approach to Guest Services. And that's kind of a teaser as to what the topic of today is. So without further ado, Andrey, I want to hand the floor over to you. If you can just kind of introduce yourself and talk about your background, and then we're just going to jump right into it.
It's Russ. Hey, everybody. Yeah, it's sometimes it's weird for me to think of my background as unusual just because I've been in slightly different um, environment for a majority of my professional career, but I guess here it's not uh, as common. But my journey kind of started when I moved to Brooklyn, New York from Kazakhstan when I was 16. I went a couple of years of high school, then right when I landed in Brooklyn, I started working for a couple of uh, catering companies after school, and that kind of lit the passion for cooking, I would say. That was how it began at first, and that path led me to the Culinary Institute of America in Hyde Park, New York, with the dreams of becoming a chef. I think I watched a little too much Food Network or Travel Channel at the time, and there what happened, I started, going through classes and read a book by kind of a legendary restaurateur in New York. His name is Meyer. He's a founder of Shake Shack and Union Square Hospitality Group. And my dream became to work at his original restaurant, Union Square Cafe in Manhattan. And I got a position there as an extern. And I think that's where my eyes were opened that what I'm really into. It's not just cooking, it's not just being in the kitchen, but hospitality. And that's where like I realized that hospitality is not just what you eat and what you serve, it's the art of taking care of people. And from that point on, I was all in. And after graduating college, I went to work at a restaurant called 11 Madison Park, which was also opened by Danny Meyer. And at the time, in 2012, was considered to be the number one or highly regarded as number one restaurant in the United States. It had 3 Michelin stars. It had 4 stars from New York Times. And I spent some time there. I think that's where majority of the things that I believe and try to uh, live by were instilled in me. And after spending some time there in 2016, I moved to LA, which shifted focus from just service to a little bit more beverage. I ran the wine and beverage programs at Gwen and Maude restaurants for Curtis Stone and Waldorf Astoria and Beverly Hills later. And last June, I found myself at SoFi Stadium working with Legends, and I've been here for about a year and a half. So it's been a fun ride. Now I oversee the suites department here. We have about 260 suites, various sizes, various styles. Uh, we have 5 different levels of those, hosting anywhere between 5 and I would say 8,500 people inside the suites for every event.
Thanks, Andrey.
Yeah.
And so I think one thing that I pulled out of that, and especially for the theme of this webinar, is that kind of Michelin component. I mean, working at Maude, working at 11 Madison Park, I think there's a lot, there's a lot of people in this industry that have, worked in stadiums and stayed in stadiums. So I think that's kind of where I pulled this novel feature of Michelin out. And I just want to dig into that a little bit more. Like Michelin, everyone knows about Michelin. Everyone knows like that stars mean that a restaurant is highly regarded in some category. But what I'm really curious about from your experience is like how do the lessons working in Michelin environments impact you? What does that mean to work for a Michelin environment?
Well, with those stars or with those accolades, however you want to look at them, what comes, it's expectation. It's people start traveling sometimes around the city with a goal to eat at your restaurant. Sometimes they travel from different states. Sometimes they travel from different countries all across the world with a dream and a goal to experience the hospitality, the restaurant, the thing that you are doing. And with that level of expectations, anybody working in that environment needs to have an uncompromising standard of excellence and precision with every single day, every single interaction. There's no things too small, there's no things too big. It starts off with a reservation call or confirmation email, going all the way through putting your code back on you when you're leaving the restaurant, or even extends past that when you get home, when you're thinking about what happened at that dinner a week ago. You take in every single one of those uh, steps into consideration, and that requires like a lot of teamwork, a lot of discipline, and commitment to continuously refine and innovate, because you cannot get stale. Because one thing that with stars especially, there can be given or taken away every single year. They're not guarantees. Uh, there's no guarantees that you'll have the same accolades next year. They have that. So you have to continuously work on refining and innovating and being better, because also all those ratings, all those things are anonymous. You don't know when you're going to get rated, on which night, on which interaction, what table, what guest is actually a Michelin star inspector. So operating at that level is intoxicating.
Yeah, I mean, and I think one thing that I think a lot of people on this, webinar can relate to is like that sense of pressure and expectation. And so I think the elephant in the room here is, like I was kind of alluding to before, not everyone comes from kind of this culinary high discipline restaurant environment, and it's very different in the stadium world, a different type of pressure. And so coming into this role, what would you say kind of was similar in terms of your experience working for these like top tier hospitality institutions versus what things were just completely divergent from your last experience?
I mean, think overall the similarities are more common. Like it's more similar than different, because from the day one that I've understood, working at the venue like SoFi or in venues in general, it's still hospitality. You just play by slightly different set of rules. It's similarities consist of like expectations, right? Meeting and expect and exceeding expectations of your guests coming into the venue. It's still the focus, right? Especially if somewhere like SoFi, people fly in from all over the country just to experience a game or a concert here. So exceeding their meeting and exceeding their expectations of these guests is not a goal, is a requirement. Like we have to operate at that level every single day here. Then what you do every single day, you just manage different relationships and different goals of many different entities, coming from your coworkers to team members on our teams that are like hourly and part-time employees, to clients, to different companies working within the building. We all have to succeed together and managing all those relationships, making sure that we all achieve our common goal, but every individual within every of those organizations achieve their personal goal as well. And I guess the differences are kind of obvious, right? It's SoFi is a $5 billion venue with an insane amount of footprint and just the resources that we have here, like coming from a restaurants where tend to be very crowded, very small, to having 12 suites kitchen and 12 suites pantries and elevators and teams and support is just incredible. And then kind of taking a step back in a way here, it was also a new thing to me where I'm used to working in places where coming there and interacting with our employees was the main focus. Having the dinner, having a drink, having the food was the goal of coming to those restaurants. Where at venues, you're more of a complementary element of a guest experience. Guests here come excited. Everybody comes here to see their favorite team play, their favorite artist perform. They're coming here for the spectacle. And our goal here is to service them as well as we can and get them back to enjoying the thing that they came here to enjoy. But with that also comes pressure where it's like, what if the spectacle is not living up to their expectations? What if their team is losing or concert is not going how they imagine? How can we elevate and enhance their experience being a support element of their goal to be at SoFi?
Interesting, interesting. I mean, and I think one thing that I'm going to dig in a little bit here is it's a little bit unsaid, but something that I've heard a lot of operators talk about is like a lot of the times, if you think about like a Michelin restaurant, it's like everything has to be perfect. You were talking about that idea of constant improvement, constant excellence associated with having, a high-end restaurant that has a Michelin star or a five-star resort or hotel. But as I talk to more and more operators, it's very obvious that within venues themselves, it's not a question of, if something goes wrong during the course of an event, it's a question of when something goes wrong. So I guess like dealing with this, background and like perfection and making sure you maintain this level of excellence and retain that Michelin star, how did that background impact this kind of notion of like, what do you do when shit hits the fan at an event or at your venue? Like that's something I really want to dig in with you.
On the various levels, Michelin star restaurants, venues, AT&T, Spectrum, I don't know, Hertz, car rentals. Everybody has a playbook, what to do when things go wrong, right? And they go wrong all the time. I don't think there's a day at SoFi or in restaurant when everything just happens exactly how it happens. People call out, things come late, something goes to a wrong location. And I think the Michelin style approach or where that obsession with details come into the play where you sit down and map out every single step of your guest experience, mapping out what could go wrong during that experience and what is your plan. How are you going to turn that mishap into an opportunity to make a lifelong memory or impression? Because what we or I find often is that things that meet expectations or go according to plan are usually forgotten quite quickly. If nothing happened, if everything happens exactly how you expected, you came in, you had dinner, you got up, you left, that might just blend in with the rest of your days and life. When things go wrong, those negative feelings can linger for a while, for days, weeks, months. You will share those to share that feedback with all your friends. But if you take an opportunity when things go wrong and you turn it around and that's your predominant focus, those can make a very long lasting impressions. So having those plans in place is paramount. And it doesn't have to be tangible, small things. What we used to do, and it's a good approach to take, it's Ross shows up to a reservation. The table is not quite ready yet. Making Ross wait at that moment might, cause some negative emotions. But what you can do, you can just hello, welcome. How about a kitchen tour? We have in the restaurants, usually, especially of that caliber, kitchens are kind of always show ready. People are always on stage. So just a short walk through the kitchen. Hey, look where your food is going to be made. This is the people who are going to be making your food. Maybe give them a small glass of wine or a cocktail or a bite. Now you just utilize something that was essentially negative, table is not ready, into giving that guest something special that if the table was ready, you would just come in, sat down, you've never even heard of the kitchen. So having those small increments in the suites, somebody dropped a bottle and it broke, replacing it instantly without any conversation, empowering your employees to do so can make the world of the difference. Because people are just like, oh, we just dropped it. And before I looked up, there was a fresh bottle sitting on the counter. Where did that come from? It's everybody is plugged in, everybody plays by the same playbook. They know that the focus is to mitigate mistakes and turn them around into something positive. And again, it doesn't have to be a thing. It can be a touch, it can be a gesture. If something is going off, you show up and you say hello, and even your team members walking those guests to an exit and wishing them a farewell can make a world of difference at the end.
Super interesting. And to kind of expand on that, I think when we were talking before this webinar, I think this is very much on theme with that response. You kind of introduced me to this concept of Danny Meyer, your prior employer, about this concept of constant gentle pressure, this kind of philosophy for how you can empower your staff or how you can influence your staff. Because clearly, like the playbook and all of these what if scenarios that you train your staff on don't just come out of nothing. There has to be some sort of paradigm that they're, listening to or thinking about that influences their ability to make these decisions. So, can you kind of talk a little bit more about this concept of constant gentle pressure that we've previously discussed and how that has influenced and manifested itself in your day-to-day at SoFi?
It's both like genius, but yet some, which most things tend to be, very simple idea of communicating and setting a high standards for your operation, and then maintaining them with steady, supportive leadership without aggressive and abrupt changes, making everybody buy into your vision and making them the part of it. You're not, I think what Danny used to say the most is like, people react really well when you change a thing or do a thing, when you do it with them versus when you do it to them, bringing them into the fold, and then after communicating that standard, then making it easier for everybody to meet those expectations by softly reminding them about those standards daily, weekly, hourly, without again just coming down on anybody very hard. And he uses a salt shaker analogy in his book where if you decided that your salt and pepper needs to be dead center in the table, at every opportunity when it's not, you put it back in the center. You don't have to tell anybody about it. You don't have to uh like have a whole meeting or lineup or memo. No, you just always yourself putting that standard visible to everybody. So you're putting the salt shaker back in the middle of the table. And I think that philosophy also extends not just to your team and your organization. It's how you also remind your guests and your clients of your standards, of like softly sending out deadline reminders or clearly mapping out or clearly, what's the word? Putting together like egress and degress plans where like how people arrive, just making it easy for them. This is the way that we do things here. I think that's what the like if you have to summarize that philosophy, that's what it is.
Yeah, and just as kind of like a quick summary, like Danny Meyer also founded Shake Shack, and the book I believe that Andre you recommended, what was it called again by Danny Meyer?
So the book is called Setting the Table. Yeah, it kind of takes the story of Danny Meyer having a dream of opening a restaurant, opening the first one called Union Square Cafe, and then going on to building an empire of Union Square Hospitality Group and opening a small burger stand in the middle of Madison Square Park in Manhattan. And like, look where that organization is now. And that's he did like he credits this philosophy a lot by like constantly maintaining your standards and having dedications to those standards.
Yep, highly recommend it to anyone in the hospitality world. And so I think as we talk about all these different, philosophies and components of how you kind of execute on excellence, whether it's kind of the ethos of, a Michelin mindset, Danny Meyer's book, all these examples about, incremental innovation and improvement and taking mistakes and turning those into opportunities. What would you say are kind of like one to two like anecdotes or events that have happened at SoFi Stadium that kind of exemplify all of these elements that have kind of manifested themselves in the day to day during a game or at an event?
I mean, a lot of, I think I can speak a lot of many examples, but I think applying this mindset to the venue, I think the main focus is to put your guest first, put their experience first, put their expectations above yours. And I think the analogy was that it's much easier to take care of people where you place yourself below them, right? So look at your guest experience through their lens, not through your own, right? So I think that will help you both maximize the small things that be beneficial to your guests, to your clients. For example, when we started here, I just started looking at like, what does the person want for their suite, right? What do they want to, what kind of experience they would like to have? And then the realization came that people actually that, paying us Legends Hospitality a lot of times are not the people who are going to be in the suite. They're not the people who are actually going to be watching the game. It's the companies, it's JP Morgan Chases and Porsches and Toyotas. Their coordinators are the ones like deciding what experience they want to create for their guests inside the suite, because the goal is for everybody when they come to SoFi is to have fun, make it easy, make it everything available. So what we quickly start doing, like by shifting through that lens, how can I make it easier for a person remotely via email or a platform or a phone call to get everything they need inside that suite for their guests to enjoy? So shortly, like for example, offering them a wine package that includes white, red, rosé, and like sparkling wine with short description and a poster inside the suite, because they don't know out of 30 people showing up what their preferences are, what those people might want to enjoy. By covering all the bases, you providing a service to the people who are actually booking the suite.
Yeah, and there was one other story you talked about with the I think it was the not
Yes.
Jack Daniel, the Johnny Walker
And
card. I thought was brilliant.
it's also like it's I think it came up in the previous webinars too. It's using fresh eyes, like challenging the status quo and having a fresh perspective on your equipment, your spaces. Like use maximize it. Just because something was used for a reason in the past doesn't need it to be continued to use for that. We recently turned one of our ice cream carts into a whiskey tasting cart because one container is utilized for ice, one container is utilized for cups. We removed the slots where the toppings for ice cream used to go. We ran a tap line through it for a cocktail. And now, because people in the suite, they don't tend to want to leave that suite to go somewhere for an activation. So we decided to bring the activation to the suite. So now that cart used to serve ice cream rolls into their space, and then they, as a group of friends or coworkers or colleagues, like-minded people, get to interact with it, get to have fun. And the only thing that was possible just because we went out and was like, let's spend a bunch of money to create a custom cart. No, we just used what we have. I
Yeah,
think that's also in with the restaurant mindset. Resources in restaurants I tend to be very, very limited. So you always try to make the most with what you got.
yeah, yeah, and the upsell opportunity too for Johnny Walker, right?
Yeah, and then they're having great time. The brand is getting themselves. Everybody wins. The brand wins because they're getting their product except like in front of very specific clientele. The clients win because they have a good time, and we win because they tasted a little Johnny Walker Blue. And what the hell? Why can't we get a full bottle? It's on a company dime anyway. So upsell
Yeah.
opportunities are always there.
I love that. I love that. And one kind of consistent thing that we do within these webinars, like to kind of close it out, is we always try and bring it back to technology. And I think what we've talked a lot about today is really about kind of like the hospitality mindset. And it's very human capital intensive. But going into every single venue, there's always a technology component that augments that. So can you kind of talk a little bit about like how technology is, intertwined and augmenting that human white glove service that you have, and like how do you leverage that?
With it's being like current with the times are changing and people interact within their environment differently, and everybody has their phone, and the majority of things in our lives now run through our phone. So like using how can we use this new developing emerging tools in order to increase our guest satisfaction, increase our efficiency, increase our upsell opportunities through technology. So a year ago, at the beginning of last season, we started off by getting the Tap Into platform as our POS system so people can more easily manage their orders, place pre-orders or day of event orders through a simple scan of QR code, giving our staff tablets so they can place those orders immediately without having to go to a central location where those orders are placed. So we greatly increase the efficiency and ease and user friendliness of our ordering process. And then this year, how our relationship started developing, we looked at it like, what else can we do better to take it to another level? So we start working with you with Listo, where now these same guests in the suite have a direct line of communication to the team that's taking care of their space. So they can put in a customized request with their server, with or the kitchen or the pantry, and things happen faster, things happen better. And Listo also kind of allow. We wouldn't. I was looking for a place to an umbrella that we can put all of our technology solution under. Like List allowed us now to collect an immediate feedback from the guest with a click of a button. It allows them to communicate with their server, requests for ice. Everything just moves smoother and faster. But now, through the same link, they can place a food order to Tap Into. Or we also work with a company called Preferably, where by clicking a button and answering a couple of questions, it gives you a wine recommendation from our very deep and extensive wine list. Just because I don't have an ability to train every single staff member what our 100 plus wines on the wine list are, but that platform allows them to make a better educated choice of what they would like to drink.
Super helpful. Super helpful. And to really close this out before we kind of move into Q&A, like you've definitely shared a lot of different little things that people can do, like looking at existing equipment and repurposing it, or this concept of constant gentle pressure. What would you say, in addition to supplementing everything else that you've suggested, are one to two things that operators can walk away with today that can help them improve their guest experience, their operation, ability to upsell, taking kind of your ethos and paradigm for hospitality into consideration?
One very simple thing, and I think because restaurant, like given the restaurant component, they're open and closed, they're new, they're fresh, they're small, right? Whereas you tend to be a smaller teams of people. With venues, they're large, and some of them been open for decades, and some people have been working in the same venue for a very long time. Every event day, I really strongly believe that having a pre-shift or a lineup, it's paramount to success. Every organization that operates at a high level, look at the teams that play at your venues. They spend every single day together in season. They have a huddle before every single game because they can discuss things. What can we do better? What did we do wrong the last event? What can we focus on? You can just 5 minutes of people getting together and resetting their focus from being outside to now it's a game time. Now for next 6 hours, I'm focused on this thing alone and I understand what, and I learned it really quickly with going from managing dozens of employees on a work day to multiple hundreds of employees. You can't get in the same room, but encourage people in the areas that they work together as a team to have a huddle before the event. Get on the same page, know what they're doing, give them updates, communicate what their expectations are for that game. Constant gentle pressure, remind them of a standard that you want them to focus on for that day. I think it makes a huge difference for the mindset that your teams will attack that day with. And then secondly, like I think with the sizes of our organizations, we are unable to trust and believe every single person in the organization. So we tend to not give them real power, like real power of decision making, real power of doing something they believe it's right because they're the closest ones to it. And mistakes are going to be made. And what we spoke earlier about, we will use those mistakes as learning opportunities. But truly empowering the staff, we all work with adults. They're interested in their own success. They're interested in giving their best product, best service to our guests. Just give them the power to make decisions, make changes, and then tell them what they did to you. But like being open to feedback. Hey, I think this will be better. I think that is different. Very recently, it's a small thing, but it's fresh on my mind. Like we have a new dish on the menu. It's called chicken yakitori. It's like this little skewers that are glazed in this soy and garlic sauce. And all of our uh, induction burners are set on high because we want to make sure that the food stays as hot as possible inside the suite. But the server said, hey, I've been dialing it down because what I noticed is that when it's set on high, that soy like glaze sauce runs all the way down to the bottom and scorches. I most likely would never know that. The culinary team also is far away, but because that attendant is inside the suite for prolonged periods of time, they know better what they experience, what small tweaks they can make for a better experience, and allowing them to do so and encouraging them to do so, it's will have a positive effect. I think it comes from this small philosophy of Toyota. It's called Kaizen. Uh, at Toyota, they encourage every single employee working the production line to stop the line at any given point if they have a way to improve the process, eliminate waste or unnecessary steps. And that's how they, Toyota, I think, doing pretty well right now. So not a bad philosophy to adopt.
That's great. That's great. So I know we've run over. Thanks to everyone who's been staying on here. We have a couple of questions, so I don't want to ignore them. So we're just going to take a couple here, and then we'll end the session. So just looking at this, SoFi's. This is one question from the audience. So SoFi's by many standards seen as the best stadium in the world. What would you say is next for SoFi, whether in general or premium, over the next 2 to 5 years to kind of stay at that forefront? So that's interesting because I'm thinking about like retaining Michelin stars. It's like, how do you maintain the prestige of SoFi Stadium over the next couple of years with that same mindset?
Um, there's different levels to it, right? Things that are in our control and things that are out of our control. Things that are out of our control, booking the best artist or our teams winning Super Bowl every year, right? We can't control that. But what we can control from Legends perspective is that whenever people get here, offering them the best cutting edge experience inside the venue that you can. And I think that's where the Michelin style approach comes full circle. The one thing I mentioned is like endless innovation. You cannot be stale. You cannot say just because we've done this last year and it worked well, we'll do the same thing. No, it worked well last year. It needs to work better this year. We did something well last year. We're gonna scratch it. We're gonna try something new because if you don't try new things, you become stale. And then all of a sudden, people going and we have a lot of competition. A brand new, the most expensive basketball arena in the world, open across the street. How do I ensure that people want to come back to SoFi and SoFi Suites versus going to a basketball game instead, which is also pretty cool.
Yeah, that's
I
a
think I
great.
would say summarize like endless innovation and always try new things because people will come back if they know that every time they come back, it gets better and better.
Sage-like advice. And last question here. And I actually had this thought too, was you mentioned about going the extra mile, something that's like free but very memorable, like giving them a kitchen tour when you're working at the restaurant. But what does that look like in the stadium setting here? Is that like, because I'm not sure you'd want to bring them, for example, to like one of your 12 kitchens if something went wrong or their suite wasn't ready. So what does going the extra mile look like within SoFi Stadium when things go wrong?
Uh, Taking notes. So in every restaurant, when the guests come in, usually people take, especially at that level, meticulous notes of what that experience is like. And when they come back a year later, you're building on that experience. So at here, what do? You have suite owners, season ticket owners, take their feedback and customize their experience, if possible, to their feedback. Small things. Mr. Ross he likes the bar set in his suite over here versus where we usually set it. Taking a note of that, and now next time they come back for an experience, their bar is set where they themselves left it last time.
Got it. And to get a little more specific, like, but as an example, say something goes wrong and like they can't get into their suite on a given day. Is there anything that you can do to kind of like distract that group of people or give them a memorable opportunity while you fix that problem? Kind of like if their table's not ready, you show them the kitchen or give them a glass of wine. Like, what does that look like at SoFi in that situation?
The thing at SoFi, just given the scale of things, like, and my personal approach, like if they have a bad experience, what can, like, reacting to it and what can be done, something is going really off, sending them home with a pack of cookies so they can enjoy it on the drive home, right? Writing them a personal note, working with the guest services team, see if they can go to what I've been trying to do is like if somebody has a poor experience during the event, if out of 260 suites, I have two suites that 60 guests are just something went really wrong. Parking, somebody broken into their suite, they had a fight. Like things happen all the time. Working with the guest services team to be like, can I have those guests at the end of the event? Suite guests can stay an hour past the end of the game. Can I just take them down to the field level for a photo? That photo will erase everything that happened in that suite. They came in, their hot dogs were cold or were accidentally didn't bring their dessert course, or again, like something the key access doesn't work. They got a chance to go on the field and take a photo as a group. They will talk next day about that photo. They won't talk about cold hot dogs.
I love that. And with that being said, I know we're just about 9 minutes over the time, but I thought this was a great conversation. Extended it just a little bit. And Andrey, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing your best practices, your insights, how you took your background and kind of brought that over to one of the most famous stadiums in the world. Really appreciate it. And excited to continue this conversation offline as well.
Thanks. Thank you, Russ. And thank you for everybody for joining. I hope I was able to give some insight to my mindset. And if one person can, you know, take what they heard here today and apply it to their guest experience, I would really consider it as a huge win. So for me, I appreciate you giving me a time.
Of course, of course. Have a great day, everyone.